Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about ePortfolios, really introducing the concept of ePortfolios, why you might want one, how you can start going about crafting your story. And I am here from the Office of High Impact Academic Partnerships. So my name is Elle Tyson. I'm the Assistant Director for ePortfolios and Digital Initiatives here at ODU, and I run the ePortfolio Studio. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is have a little bit of a free write. Um, you don't have to do all of these. Just pick one to answer. As I said before, you can put it in the chat. I'll give us a chance to open our mics and say it out loud if we want to, but just free write a response to at least one of the following. Your feelings about ePortfolios. Are you interested, excited, a little bit anxious or apprehensive, unsure? Um, any of your experiences connected to creating an ePortfolio? Have you had to make one before? What happened? What did you like about it? What worked and didn't work? Do you have specific aspirations for your ePortfolio? Um, what are you hoping your ePortfolio will look like and do? And what are you hoping to learn through making your ePortfolio? And then you can also just talk about any questions you have about ePortfolios and maybe what you're hoping we'll talk about in today's workshop. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to think about these. I'll open up the chat and yeah, just think about these, write down a little bit of your answer. So first off, we like to start a little bit with some of the value of having this online identity. So it's been found that employers are expecting people to have this online presence more and more. And we do have this section here about how their social media is used to evaluate job seekers, but also you're able to create an e-portfolio, a website about yourself and your skills and accomplishments. And this is a way for you to really control the narrative um, and um, make sure that you're able to present the best parts of you. So social media is not really what's used for, jobs and making sure that you're prepared to show everything about your job. The only thing that you should be doing with your social media is just going through and making sure that there's nothing in it that would prevent someone from wanting to hire you. And really, what they're looking for is that you're well-rounded, have a wide range of interests, that some of your background information supports what you're saying your professional qualifications are. So your social media doesn't need to be completely career oriented. That is what your ePortfolio is for. So in this manifest recruitment survey that was done about, I think about 5 or 6 years ago, even then, 98% of the employers, and there were about 300 employers surveyed for this, who answered 300 employers who actually answered the survey, I should say. 98% of them said that they did background research on the candidates. 90% were looking at that social media. 43% just did a Google search to see what would come up for them. And 80% were already saying that a personal website is important when evaluating a candidate. Um, so this is something that is becoming more and more important. We definitely have students who come to us sometimes if their particular program didn't emphasize ePortfolios and they weren't made to do the ePortfolio, that they go to start applying for jobs, and some of the jobs actually they're not able to even submit the application without providing that ePortfolio link. And the same with some graduate schools, it's a requirement, it's not an extra thing. All right. So having said that, you might be sitting there like, I've heard the word ePortfolio, but what actually is an ePortfolio? So it's basically a practice that encourages you to collect evidence of your learning over time and then take some time to stop and actually reflect on those experiences, and then the ability to talk about what skills you got out of assignments that you've done, research that you've done, where you're actually able to kind of practice articulating what's important about the assignments that you've done. What did you get out of them? What skills do you have now? Anything that you kind of overcame through doing those assignments and that kind of thing. All right. So we always like to kind of bring it back, for graduate students. We know a lot of you like to kind of know what the research is on this. And really, it's part of integrative learning. And by this, we mean that you're able to make connections among ideas and synthesize what you've learned. So instead of seeing each of your courses, each of your projects as their own separate, distinct thing, you're able to show how all of those courses and experiences combine with each other to make it to where you're able to do the things that you can do and be who you are. All right. So we do have the career pathways, ePortfolio guidelines. We have two different tracks, preparing future faculty and preparing future professionals. So there are slightly different requirements for these just because there are different things that are, required if you want to stay in academia or, leave academia and do what we call alt-ac. But basically, you are going to make your ePortfolio related to that. It will include your CV or resume, these reflection activities, reflection on events that you go to, your mentored teaching experience. So we like to point these out just because this is an event sponsored by Career Pathways. They have this great ePortfolio, a way that you can get started on your ePortfolio and have really good content to put in there.
Elle, could I interject real briefly?
Of course.
Hi, everyone. I'm Wee Youssef. I am Director of Career Pathways, and I just wanted to kind of give you a little um, preview, for lack of a better word. But really, as you think about completing the Preparing Future Faculty and preparing the future professionals certificates, this e-portfolio is also a way for you to package who you are as a future practitioner or as a future faculty member. So that's why we ask that you include your CV on your e-portfolio if you want to be a future faculty member as part of the PFF certificate, because your CV, again, is part of your academic, scholarly, faculty identity. And then those professional development activities are there to showcase the types of professional development activities that you've undertaken to help show who you are as a future faculty, as a scholar, as a researcher, as a teacher. The same thing with future professionals. You know, part of your identity then is dictated by what the contents of your resume, and we want you to be able to showcase your resume and the professional development activities that you might have undertaken so that you can enhance your resume. So this, again, think about that ePortfolio as a way to tell the story for who you are as a future faculty member or as a future professional. The story is as important as the ePortfolio as a tool to present it. It's the whole package. Thank you, Elle.
Yes. All right. So with that being said, we are going to do another activity where you actually look at some ePortfolios. I know when you're first getting started in ePortfolios, sometimes it can really help to just see a few examples so that you're like, oh, okay, this is what they look like. None of them are perfect. It's very much one of those things, you can always keep working on your ePortfolio. It's not like there's, this perfect portfolio and you're all done and you never do anything in your career again. It will always be changing as long as you keep doing things. But so it's a good idea to kind of look at some models. As you're looking at these, think about what stands out to you, what you find effective, what you find ineffective, and what makes an e-portfolio different from a platform like LinkedIn. We get this question a lot, and I want to give you guys a chance to think about it a little bit before we answer that question. So just take some time, look through at least one of these. Some people are able to quickly look through all of them, but just look through at least one to give yourself a good idea of what ePortfolios um, are kind of all about and a little bit about what you can do with your ePortfolio. So did anyone look at Leela's website? I will go first. So Leela's is a one pager and it's for a very specific amount of time for an internship. We like to just show this as an example of a project portfolio, that every portfolio doesn't have to be like your big full professional portfolio, but this is one of her internship with ODU Theater. You can see she has a lot of pictures of her actually doing the thing. She has a lot of reflection, self evaluation, that kind of thing. She has some linked out articles that were done on her, videos. I feel like you get a pretty good idea of the work that she's done, that, she knows what she's doing. She got a lot out of this internship in a really short amount of time. So that's something that ePortfolios can do that your print resume doesn't really do, because most print resumes look pretty similar to each other. Whereas with a portfolio, you're able to make that impression really quickly. Just within microseconds, people have made their initial impression when they see your website. Did anyone want to say anything else about Leela's before we move to Ivan's? All right. So I will pull up Ivan's. Did anyone look at this one and have any feedback they want to give on this one?
Yes, I looked at this one. It's simple and it's straight to the point. I thought that the photo he selected was a very catchy one with a wide smile, pleasant face. He has a quote at the bottom by Maya Angelou. He's written a bit about his aspirations and a legacy he's built working hard. And although it's about a one-page write-up, it captures everything about him. It's professional and as well as like not too intense. It's professional, but it's not too intense. Thank you.
Yeah. What did you guys think of the pop-up that I closed before? I will say that one is very controversial. Some people really like it and think it's fun. Some people I think, have some kind of pseudo trauma from pop-ups, and they're immediately like, oh my gosh, it's an ad pop-up. So they don't like the pop-up. He was given that feedback and he decided to keep the pop-up because he thought it was fun, and he was like, okay, yeah, maybe some people won't like it. But that is a really important thing with your ePortfolio. And when you get feedback on your ePortfolio, you should definitely always take any feedback into consideration. But in the end, it is your portfolio and you get to decide how you want to represent yourself. So another thing about his is, I think you can tell he's a very playful person, but he is um, skilled and has a lot of good experience. So there's that pop-up that's a little bit playful. And then he kind of has this kind of silly mock serious picture for his contact. So I feel like it gives you a little bit of a view into his personality while he's able to kind of show that he has experience, he can do the job even though he, wants to have a good time while doing it. All right. And then what about Shane's portfolio?
Yeah, Shane, he had a lot of pictures of his actual work, from being that he was an engineer, which was good to show.
Yeah, and he really does a good job of the what we call curation, where it's a selection, so it's his best work. You don't want to go in and try to put every single thing that you've ever done. There will be a lot of stuff that you've done that you're proud of, but it just doesn't fit on the portfolio. Like, you don't want to overwhelm people. So he really like picked his three most important projects, has a little bit more information about them on there. And then he did the same thing for his course projects. He has 4 different course projects with the courses that they were in. And this is also a selection of course projects. So the further you get along, you'll start to kind of figure out what are the really like important things that you want to make sure that people have. All right. Thank you, guys. So you've seen these examples. Some of them, they did not produce these overnight. So we like to point out that if you work on these over time, they can be a lot more robust. We are English scholars over in the ePortfolio program. So we have this, the 5 C's of ePortfolios. So you are going to create materials, which means you already have materials that you've created in courses, for projects, that kind of thing. Maybe you'll create extra materials for your portfolio, but most of the materials will be things that you've already needed to create. And then you're going to collect them, which means you're going to intentionally archive those materials, have some kind of organization. We recommend saving everything that you do, because you never know when you might want to pull something older. Maybe you want to show the process of something. This is where I started. Now look at how much better I am at this thing. So it's just a good idea to just save everything that you work on in your archive, and then you're able to curate, making those decisions, selecting which evidence shows what it is that you're trying to show that you're able to do. And then you want to make sure that you converse with people, show it to people, receive feedback. This step is really important. You'll be working on something and you're thinking it's going to be received a certain way, and then when you try to show people, sometimes you'll notice that a lot of people respond in a similar way to it, and you're like, okay, that wasn't what I was trying to do, so let me go back and actually make a few changes, make sure things are clear. One thing that I always recommend to students is, if you were to sit down with someone and walk them through your portfolio and you feel like you need to tell them a lot of explanation out loud, then make sure that all of that explanation is included in your portfolio, because your website is going to be doing a lot of work when you're not sitting right there to explain it. And you want to make sure that everything makes sense. No one's looking at your portfolio like, I wonder why they included that assignment or why they have that picture, because they shouldn't be doing that, because you should have written that in there for them, as a caption, as a little paragraph, that kind of thing. And then that you're able to make connections between things. So I talked about this a little bit earlier, that you can connect all of your experiences, apply your learning to new situations, anticipate future use. So this is where in your portfolio you can say how those skills can be used for the career that you're looking for. And it helps you establish those networks, share the link with people, make sure that your link is on, your resume, your email signature, all of those things. All right. And we always like to have this slide. I know there's a lot of stuff on this slide, but we always like to put it in there to make sure to point out that there are a lot of different ways to show your learning and experience. So a lot of people think about the written work, a paper that you've written, an essay, that kind of thing. But we also have professional goals statements, 5-year plans, 10-year plans, your research projects, those reflective essays, journal and blog entries. And then you can even share things like group projects, community service work, those reflections on events that you've gone to, examples of your problem solving. We've had students who show something like, we had a student who was in library sciences, and on her portfolio, she showed like a screenshot of a spreadsheet that she'd been working on to catalog things. And someone in a different field was a little bit confused why she had that picture on there. But someone in the library sciences field was like, that is a really good example for our field. She's explaining how she created this new way of cataloging and what work she did, and she has that picture, and so they thought it was a really good example. So as you're working on your portfolio, it's important to get feedback from lots of different kinds of audiences. So then maybe a sentence or two that explains why it's really impactful that you did that catalog work would go a long way. Or maybe if your only audience is people in that field, you're not as worried about, making sure that you explain that. So it's really related to, who your audience is, that kind of thing. All right. And then you can have audio visual examples, photographs, images, artwork. You can have, as I said, spreadsheets, database projects, that kind of thing. You can also create timelines, infographics, concept diagrams. We had one student who he was returning to school to do a PhD, and he felt like his journey was kind of really all over the place, and he wasn't really sure how to kind of represent that. And he decided to create a timeline kind of his professional life up until then, to kind of point out different times that he did different things. So that was a way that he chose to create an audio visual. So there are lots of ways that you can add interesting elements to your portfolio beyond just, including an essay that you've written or something like that. All right. So this is a report done by AAC&U, and it's basically, what do employers say matters the most to them? So employers still see the ePortfolio as more important than your transcript. Transcripts have gotten a little bit more important, but ePortfolios in this 2020 survey were up to almost 50% of employers were saying that ePortfolios were important to them. And then on the question of if they were more likely to consider a candidate with an ePortfolio, 45% said that they were somewhat more likely, and 44% were saying that they were much more likely. So only about 11% said that it didn't really matter to them if someone had an ePortfolio. So the fact that employers are saying that, and it's something that it isn't super difficult for you to do. Like it's something that also really helps you to figure out how everything connects. And then once you've done that work in your ePortfolio, when you're in an interview situation, you're actually a lot more likely to be able to answer some of those questions because you've done the work of sitting there and thinking about how everything connects. And think about, employers say that when there are two candidates that look pretty similar on paper, so, you know, similar GPAs, their resume is pretty similar in their experience, if one of them has an ePortfolio, they're almost always more likely to be the one that gets hired, because if you can click on the ePortfolio, even if they only spend like 30 seconds on it, it gives them a good idea of who you are, as we saw with those other portfolios. You know, you don't know those people, but just within, you know, a minute or two, you get at least a good idea of what they've done, how competent they are, and that kind of thing. All right. So, with all that being said, as you're working on your ePortfolio, we're very lucky here at ODU that we have a full support team. We have an ePortfolio studio of undergraduate and graduate tutors. We provide tutoring face-to-face and online, so you can come to the Library Learning Commons, and room 1313 is where we're located in person. And then we also do appointments over Zoom like this one. We have open studio sessions that will be scheduled probably starting next week, that we announce in university announcements. And then we have workshops like this one. We also have asynchronous support where after you've started working on your portfolio, you can make an appointment by giving us your link, and we will pull it up on our screen. You'll be able to see how someone navigates through your website. We'll make a video of us going through it, giving you some feedback and that kind of thing, and then you're able to watch the video. This is a good option for people who, you know, don't have a lot of time to do that Zoom or in-person appointment. We also have our written tutorials, our video tutorials, and we have a gallery of more examples if you want to look through more examples. We also have our collected tutorials. So we have a lot of tutorials, but then we also have these starting guides that are like the top, like 5 to 10 tutorials that you need to be able to make your site with that particular platform. So we have those for Canva, for Wix, and for WordPress. And so I wanted to make sure to kind of just give the basics of those 3 platforms. In our next workshop, we're actually going to take some time to do some building in those platforms. And I have a slide about that next workshop too, but I do like to just kind of talk a little bit about some of the basics of each platform, so you can start thinking about which one you think you might want to do. So Canva is considered an easy ePortfolio. Part of the reason for that is to build a Canva website, the way that you build it is very similar to a slideshow. So each different section of the Canva website is like its own slide. So you would have, you know, like your home page, but it is one that just scrolls down. So this can be a good one for someone who is really familiar with making slideshows, but isn't necessarily someone who needs to do a lot of design work and that kind of thing. They have really good built-in templates that you can use. So, and some people have already used them to make like flyers, to make things for clubs, for their classrooms if they're teachers, that sort of thing. So it's really intuitive, and it's just like making a slideshow. So that is one option, and it's a free thing that you can use. You should be able to actually use your ODU information and do a student account. which gives you some of the premium images. If you're not able to do that, they have a lot of free stuff on there. You don't ever have to have a premium account or anything like that. So there is Canva. We also have ODU WordPress. ODU WordPress, it's not that it's difficult, but it is more of a learning curve, and you do have to know a little bit more about kind of how to navigate those things. Obviously, you can come see us if you think you might want to use WordPress and you want a little help with it. The thing with WordPress is that it is a block editor, and you have to kind of make changes in it and then publish it and preview it to really see what it looks like. So some people don't like it as much. One benefit to using WordPress is that it is very accessible. It won't let you make design decisions that go against accessibility. So sometimes people feel a little bit restricted by that and they want to make a lot of design changes. But if you want to just make a good looking site that you know is accessible, you know everything will be aligned properly and centered when it should be centered and that sort of thing, WordPress can be a really good choice. One of the drawbacks of WordPress is that now that we don't have alumni accounts, you will have to um, export the site and import it onto regular WordPress once you graduate. So that can be a reason that some people choose not to use the ODU WordPress, but it is a good website builder if you choose to do that one. And then for Wix, some of you might be familiar with it. It is also a free tool. It is not through ODU. You can use your ODU email address, but you can share it easily with your personal email address. This is one that it has a lot of design options, like so many design options that the reason some people don't choose Wix is that it's too overwhelming, that they have so many things they can do with the design. But it's a really good choice for people who want to be able to, you know, move things around and make it look exactly like what they're picturing in their head. If you're that type of person, Wix could be a really good choice for you. And it's also a good choice if you want to make like a really robust navigation to your site where you think you might want to have pages and subpages in your menu and that kind of thing. That's something that a simpler website like Canva can't really support. All right. And then for ODU WordPress, there are PFF and PFP templates that you can activate directly in the program yourself. But if you want a template for the PFF or PFP website for you to make from Wix, you can actually request it from us. You just go to this form, fill in the information, select if you want the PFF or PFP template, and then we will manually duplicate that website and transfer it to you. And then once we've done that, you would just need to accept the transfer in your email. You have 3 days to accept the transfer. So after you make that request, just be looking out for the email because sometimes students forget the part where they have to actually accept the transfer. If that happens, you can always reach out to us. We'll send it to you again. But just try to pay attention to that if you make one of those requests. So the template is on ODU WordPress. You can activate it, but you can also request a Wix template as well. All right. And then our next workshop is in November. It's on November 6th. It's the same time as this one, 12:30 to 1:30. We will be doing breakout rooms for Wix, Canva, and ODU WordPress, depending on what people are interested in working in. So hopefully some people will be coming already with their website done. If you're just getting started, that's okay too. We'll do a little part at the beginning of the workshop where I kind of I'll walk through a little bit in more detail about the differences between Wix, Canva, and WordPress. So if you haven't picked one yet, you can kind of make your decision of which one you want to work on that day. And just remember, you're never married to one of them. If you start in Canva and you decide you want to change to Wix or to WordPress, you can definitely do that. You don't have to lose any of the work that you've done. You can always copy over any of the work that you've written. We always recommend that you back up your work. So sometimes people will do a lot of their composing within the platform, the website building platform. We recommend always having it backed up somewhere else because it is technology. It works well most of the time, but technology does fail sometimes. And there's nothing worse than a student having done all of their work only on the website and something goes wrong with their website. And then they don't have anything that they've written or done in any other location. So we always recommend, just have a draft of all of the whatever you've written up in like a Google Doc, a Word doc, something like that. All right. And then if you have any further questions, we'll have about 10 minutes for questions. And if you guys want me to pop into one of the platforms, I can definitely do that. But if you have further questions, you can email us ePortfolio@odu.edu. I have a little map here of where we're located in the library. So if you want to pop in, you can do that. We recommend making an appointment with us first. You can get to the appointments, the way to make appointments through the portal. It should still be in there for ePortfolio support. But I'll also share in the chat the link for getting to us for ePortfolio support.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to add, for a lot of students, I think there's this worry about, oh, I've got to get the ePortfolio done. But the ePortfolio is really more kind of the technical back end of it. And I think what really students struggle with before they get to the ePortfolio is actually defining what is the story that they want to tell with their ePortfolio. What is the message or the identity that they want to portray in their ePortfolio? And so when they don't have that ready to go, and then they start sitting down in front of Canvas or Wix or Adobe, it's just that the lack of that coherent story is actually the overarching struggle, not necessarily the technology or the platform itself. And so I think the exercise that Elle led, where you looked at those examples and figured out what you liked, what you didn't like, how it helped tell the story, I think that's really critical. Because until you understand that story and figure out what kind of picture do I want to use, what kinds of other imagery, is a milestone the useful tool for me? Uh, should I be including articles? If you want to be a professor, should you maybe think about recording short lectures so you can show your teaching experience or teaching abilities? All of that is something that you need to think before you actually sit in front of the computer and actually start doing your ePortfolio. I feel sometimes that is the stumbling block, not the fear of I've never used I've never used Wix, I've never used WordPress before. I think once you know the story, the execution is a little easier because you know what content you want. Everything's ready to go. It's just a matter of now pulling it together using the whatever platform it is that you end up selecting. So I strongly urge you to think about, what do I want my ePortfolio to tell about me? What is my identity as a scholar? What is my identity as a professional, as a practitioner? And use that to pull all of the different pieces together.
Yeah, definitely. That is something that's the purpose of your ePortfolio, is to be able to tell that story, make everything connect. And like my example of the student who created the timeline, he felt like some of his story, it was hard to make the connection. So he was like, I need to be able to make that connection for people so that they understand why I've done so many different things, but how all of those different things make me who I am today and make me better at doing the stuff that I want to do. So yeah, really doing that work to figure out what you want to put in your portfolio. And like I said, you want to have that archive of all of your materials that you're choosing from and really picking the examples of your work that support the story of yourself that you're trying to tell. So as we know, you'll have done so much work that doesn't make it in there, and that's okay. You know, if you get an interview and you want to talk to someone and you want to send them more work that you've done because they're interested, you can always do that. It doesn't mean that you didn't do any of that work that doesn't get included in your portfolio. Um, but yeah, taking that time to kind of stop and think about the story that it is that you're trying to tell of yourself is really important. And looking at examples does give you a really good idea of what you want to do, how you want to do that. I'm going to pull up our website really quick just to show you our gallery if you want to look at more examples. So we have a couple of examples from our ePortfolio competition here. But we also have this spreadsheet archive. So we have just a couple on, just a few websites on our actual website, but then we have this spreadsheet archive of just a lot of different examples. We have them, you know, categorized a little bit so you can see graduate portfolios from other institutions, graduate portfolios from our institution. And then, you know, if you want to look at some other ones just for ideas, you can. But so we have a lot of examples to look at to help you get an idea of, you know, what you might want to include in your portfolio. So what do you guys think? Are you excited for starting on your portfolio? Nervous?
Yeah, we're excited. And I think that I'm grateful for the input that came um, asking, what story you want your e-portfolio to tell. Because I was going to ask earlier that how is it different from your CV? Because you're supposed to put a copy of your CV in there, your resume in there as well. But almost all the details you're putting there, are taken from the CV, the resume. So I was going to ask that. And then when you were talking about what employers look out for, I'm interested in the professional, aspect, like future professional, page. So I was interested in hearing some of the things that, these employers are really interested in seeing. Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny because like a lot of people want to only put like their best, most polished work and act like they didn't have to put that much effort in to kind of get to that point. But what people really, really want to see is a little bit of the process of you getting there. So you don't have to put like every rough draft or anything like that, but addressing a little bit things that might have been difficult and how you overcame it. You know, what you thought before you did something and then how your views on it changed after you had more experience in it. Some of those kind of things can be really compelling if you're, you know, willing to kind of put it out there. Um, we know teachers who have made really robust e-portfolios, and then in their interview, they're actually asked to pull up their portfolio and like talk about some of the stuff that they've included on there. So it's really a way that you can show that you're able to do things instead of just telling them. So a CV or resume, you know, you can list something out that you did something or you're able to do something, but the portfolio lets you have an example of that work, talk a little bit about what you got out of doing that work, and then what you're able to do now because you did that. And you're able to show some visuals related to whatever it is that you're trying to show. So it's not, an ePortfolio is never a replacement of your CV or resume, but it's an enhancement of it. So that's why we always recommend, you know, to kind of do this recursive thing where you have the link to your portfolio on your resume or CV, but then you also include your resume or CV in your portfolio. So, you know, just cover all your bases.
Well, I really like, like you framed it as an enhancement, and I think that's really the important part. So say, for example, the standard in our professionals is a one-page resume. There probably are things that you really want to highlight that might not make it onto that one-page resume, but a really critical skill that you have. And so it might be one thing to say, I have GIS skills. It's another to maybe put a map on there that you created, or a link to a story map that tells the research that you did, or a sample of a project to show that it's not just, oh, you listed a bullet that shows you have GIS skills, but here's an actual map that you created. Those, I think it is a way to emphasize different pieces that maybe employers are really interested in, or it could also be a way to highlight the skills that you want people to know you have. So yes, they're on your resume, but this is helping pick pieces from your resume or from your CV to emphasize, to illustrate, to highlight. So, but that's what you get to pick, right? It's your resume, but then you get to tell what story with what pieces of evidence or pictures or examples.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming today.